Greetings. I have a question for you today. I was wondering what your thoughts were regarding coincidences. I know some people say there's no such thing as a coincidence, but myself, I've had some remarkable coincidences happen to me in my lifetime, some rather recently, that I'd like to share with you. And I thought perhaps some of you might offer your own thoughts on the subject. My husband and I operate a small business, started it about 2.5 years ago. Most of our clients are interior designers. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I was watching an episode of The Real Housewives of Orange County, and I noticed that one of the housewives was using an interior designer who was local to the area. And since she lives very close to me, and just a neighboring community, and we had never heard of this designer, I thought perhaps I could get some information regarding him if I looked on the show's website. So I Googled The Real Housewives of Orange County and hit The Real Witches of Orange County. What was that? That was really remarkable. I've lived in Orange County for over 30 years, and I have never heard of that. So I guess you know what's coming next in my story. I discovered the YouTube community. I discovered the Moon Mother herself, and I spent probably the next month of my life glued to my computer, unable to tear myself away, episode after episode of her hilarity. I was mesmerized. I watched so often that my husband soon started to recognize her voice and would call to me as he passed the office, "So how's Jackie doing today?" I started to realize I knew everything about her. I knew where she lived. I knew what she ate for dinner, what cocktails she had to go with it. I knew about her family. I knew what her house looked like. I knew about her practice. She was my friend. Well, no, she wasn't my friend. She didn't know me at all. She had no idea I even existed. I admit I was really starting to feel creepy then. So I emailed her. I introduced myself to her. I said, "I just live up the freeway from you. I think we have so much in common. I'd love the opportunity to meet with you someday." Exchanging our emails, we discovered a remarkable coincidence. We not only were neighbors now, but we had been actual neighbors years ago when she lived on my very street. She lived perhaps only 12 houses down from me, and even more remarkably, I had to have gone past her house at least twice a day because my daycare provider lived just down the end of the street. I was amazed. I had been given so many opportunities to meet her, but we never had met. We kept getting chance after chance after chance. Were they coincidences? I mentioned on my first video that I had met my husband when I was 14 years old. I don't think I mentioned that he had been my neighbor. He lived only perhaps a quarter of a mile from my house, and I had to walk past his house every time I walked down the hill into town and every time I walked home. We also skated on the same flooded field in the winter. We bought the same ice cream at the shop. We shared a piano teacher. We even realized that we had played baseball together in the neighborhood pickup games, the hill kids versus the lower end kids. How many times had we played baseball? How many times had we skated on that little small pond? For 9 years. We were given chance after chance after chance of meeting, but we never did until the summer of love, 1967, when we met at the local swimming pool. Now, I didn't love him when I first met him, but I will tell you, both of us knew we were supposed to be together from that very beginning, from the very first chance that we met. There was something very familiar about each other that we knew was going to last. Were those coincidences? Several years ago, we were doing something that we do for fun when we get an idle Saturday, a free Saturday that we don't have anything planned. We're very busy usually. It doesn't happen very often, but we like to, when we get a chance, visit some local occult shops. There's some ones that we go to regularly, and one of those is up in Long Beach. And while we were there, we came across another shop, one that we had never seen before. This shop was very nice, and I felt myself really drawn to the back of the shop, and there off the back of the shop was a room. Now, usually I would think that was a private area and not venture in, but glancing in, I noticed there were some shelves in there and candles lit, and it seemed to be the kind of a place that was welcoming patrons to go in. So I went in the room, and immediately I felt really odd. There was a table, 2 women about my age, sitting at the table, engaged in conversation, not really noticing me. But all of a sudden I felt very awkward. I felt out of place. Had I ventured in a place that was private? Had I gone and interrupted a private conversation? It wasn't that feeling though. It was some other kind of a feeling. It was more like excitement. That butterfly kind of a feeling that you get. I didn't know what. I didn't recognize the women. I got a good look at one of them, one of her faces, and I don't know. I didn't know her, but at any rate, I left. We left the shop. We eventually were making the drive home. I couldn't help to realize the entire way home I was thinking about that woman, thinking about her face. I recognized her face. I had seen her somewhere, even though she had never recognized me. There was something about her that I knew that woman. I thought about it for a while, for a few days, and then it came to me. I remembered an experience that I had had nearly 40 years before, when I was a very young college freshman, away from home for the very first time, living on campus in a dorm. I hadn't been there longer than 3 weeks, maybe probably only 2 weeks, and I found myself in the college dean of students' office. I had been called in to talk to the dean. He needed to speak with me because apparently the roommate that I had been assigned was certain I was a drug dealer. Apparently, my clothing and my choice of music was very frightening. Excuse me. It was very frightening. So he wanted to set the record straight. Well, I have to tell you, this was a traumatizing experience for me. My permanent record was at stake after all. But after assuring the dean that I was clean, I was sent back to my room. My roommate was reassigned. I was told I was free to select a new roommate of my own choosing this time. And life went on. A few days later, there was a knock at my college dormitory room. And there was a woman, a young girl, college student age, and a companion. I don't recall her companion, whether even was a male or a female, I don't remember. I didn't notice, but this woman came in and she was dressed, wearing a hood, a long hood, long cape, hooded cape. And I couldn't really see much of her, but she had this hood up, and the hood really circled her face, so I really got a good look at her face. She had apparently heard about my unfortunate incident. She wanted to make sure I was okay. She wanted to make sure that I understood there were people there who would be there to help me if I needed them. They cared about me. All I needed to do was ask and I would be helped. And her name was Linda, I think was her name. I remember her as being Linda. And then she left as swiftly as she had come. I was really sort of stunned. I didn't think to ask her any questions because I was so surprised to see her. I was so surprised that anybody knew what had happened to me, let alone somebody coming to offer me help. How did she even find me? My dorm was probably close to a half a mile from the main part of the campus. My room was on the 4th floor of the dormitory. It was a mystery. What else was a mystery was I don't think I ever saw her again. Her face was very clear in my mind, and I do think I looked at her for a while, but I didn't really see her again. I never saw her on campus. I never saw her in any of my classes. Never saw her in the dormitory again. Never laid eyes on her again until that day in Long Beach, in that little shop. Coincidence? What would be a really remarkable coincidence, wouldn't it? That was 40 years later and 3,000 miles away from where my college was. Could it even possibly be her? Makes no sense. Really makes no sense. And how was I ever to find out? No, I did not go back and ask. I didn't even know what to ask because, remember, I wasn't even sure that Linda was her name. So what was the point? What was the point of it? I think it could have been her. I don't know if it was her, but let's say it was not her. She was very important to me because that day reminded me of something. It reminded me of something that I try to carry with me all the time. To look for the people, look for the faces in the crowd. Somebody wants to meet me. Somebody needs to meet me. I maybe need to meet somebody. Was it a coincidence that I met Jackie? Was I supposed to meet Jackie? Was I supposed to meet Dan? Perhaps I was supposed to meet some of the other friends that I have made through the friendship I have struck up with them. Maybe dear blessed Janet was the reason I was to meet. Maybe they needed me in some way. I'm not sure. But I do know there was a reason that we were given so many opportunities to meet each other. There was a reason my husband and I were given so many opportunities to meet. Deepak Chopra has some interesting things to say about coincidence that I'd like to share for you before I finish, if I might. He says, when you live your life with an appreciation of coincidences and their meanings, you connect with the underlying field of infinite possibilities. This is when the magic begins. When a coincidence arises, don't ignore it. Ask yourself, what is the message here? What is the significance of this? Perhaps you will meet a person who is somehow related to the coincidence that occurred. An encounter, a relationship, a chance meeting, a situation, a circumstance will immediately give you a clue to its meaning. The key is to pay attention and inquire. I'd love to hear your opinions. I'd love to hear your experiences, your own experiences. Have you had any remarkable coincidences that have happened to you or that have changed your life in any way? Please feel free to give me a video response. I'd love it. In the meantime, I want to thank you for listening. I am Rebecca, and I send you blessings.